Hey guys, Julian here, and today I'm going to be making a full warehouse techno track from zero, nothing, like I've got in front of me right now, to a completely mastered and finished track. So if you want to hear the finished track, you can skip to the point in the description now. And yeah, so as usual, you can get the project file and the samples from this track. I'm going to have the full thing available in the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it will be available there as well shortly. And yeah, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I've got a few drum samples prepared. I'm going to start with a kick, and I like to start with a kick with this style. Let's use this one because it's really like the foundation. Like the kick is going to be both the bass, well, like the main low end, and like the kick that really drags the track through and really helps to give it like, yeah, that kind of like really steady beating kind of feel. So I like to start with this since it's kind of like the most foundational element. So I've got this kick sample here. You can hear it. It's pretty nice and bassy. It hits really hard. These are usually the kind of kicks I like to start with for like techno in general. Let's go to like 132 BPM. But yeah, I like using a kick like this because it just hits really hard right out of the gate. And you're kind of like already starting with something really solid. So yeah, I feel like it works really well for this. So what I'm going to do here is I've just put in these quarter notes. And I'm going to make the reverb kick. So what I'm going to do here, or the rumble kick, I guess if you want to call it that, is I'm going to get an audio effect rack and we're going to make two chains. So you guys who have watched my videos before have probably seen this. Basically we're going to have one will be called the dry chain, one will be called the rumble chain. And on the rumble chain we're going to put a few effects. So the first thing that we're going to put on here is this reverb. I'm going to solo this. We're going to turn the dry wet all the way up. Maybe keep the decay time about there for now. Sometimes I like to turn the size down a little bit. You can hear it makes it sound a little bit more focused. And yeah, so then from there, I'm going to get this amp. And with the amp, we're just gonna maybe turn up the bass a little bit. We can try a few of these different. Alright, this one works the best. But yeah, we're just going to get that in there. And then the last thing on this rumble chain that we're going to do is we're going to get a low pass filter. And there we go. We have the rumble. So now if we unsolo that and play it with the dry one, we can kind of mix them in. And you can hear this is a really, really good start for a kick. Now, from here, we kind of need to do a few things. Like for one, I think it needs to be kind of beefed up a bit more. So I'm going to get a drum bus here. Maybe we can turn on. Yeah, that's pretty good. And you can see that's hitting pretty hard too. We can turn it down a little bit. Let's put it down to like, yeah, -6 is about good. I try to keep it around like -5, -6 at all times. But okay, so that's sounding pretty good. So I'm still not entirely sure yet. Like a lot of times with these kind of kicks, it can be sort of hit or miss. Like you really think that it's hitting hard and it's really like, yeah, like pounding the way you want it to, but it's really hard to tell until you have other stuff in there. So I think I'm going to start bringing in some other sounds. And the first thing that I'm going to get here is a little hi-hat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get operator. We're going to put in 16th notes, and I'm going to show you how to synthesize your own hi-hats. It's really not that difficult, especially for like techno kind of more like drum machine style hi-hats. So like I said, we just put in some 16th notes here. You can hear those. I'll solo this. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into this operator and we're going to grab a white noise. I'm going to turn the sustain down. Maybe turn the decay down a bit as well. So you can hear it's a bit more like a hi-hat. And then to kind of seal the deal, so to speak, we're going to put a bandpass filter on there. So then once we get the bandpass, maybe turn the resonance up a little bit. There we go. We've got a pretty nice hi-hat. Yeah, that's good. And you can hear this is really good for adding a lot of energy. Like this kick on its own has a lot of power to it. But when we bring that hi-hat in, like just that really fast kind of rhythm really helps, I feel like, to give a lot of energy to the track. So then from there, I'll add a little bit more stuff. I've got some samples in here. I want to do sort of like an open hi-hat or like an upbeat kind of hi-hat. Basically something kind of like this. You know, like a standard kind of dooch, dooch, boots and cats, so to speak. Now, the thing about this is that you can't really just use a hi-hat. Something I've been noticing recently when I've been listening to a lot of, like, especially harder kind of techno tracks, is that the hi-hats, especially these, like, open, upbeat hi-hats, so to speak, are really actually hard-hitting. Like, they do a really good job at making them not as powerful as the kick, but, like, very powerful like that. Like, they really cut through the mix. And the secret to that, I think, is layering. Nice voice crack there. So, what we're gonna do here is I have this hi-hat. And that's a nice foundation, but I'm gonna bring in the shaker underneath it. And you can hear when we do that. And we kind of mix them a little bit. It's kind of giving it a bit more power. And we can play around with these too. Like, I'll probably pitch up the hi-hat a bit. We can even pitch up the shaker as well. But yeah, I feel like that really helps when you layer them together, because you get that nice kind of mid-rangey, like, shaker sound, and then you get the, like, hit of the hi-hat. Maybe shorten the decay of that a little bit. Alright, nice. So from here, I can start doing a bit of grouping. I'm going to group all these hi-hats together and just do a little bit more to them. Let's put an EQ8 on there. I like doing this and just kind of cutting out the low end, because, like, it just clears it up. Like, you can see, there's a lot of low end going on there, and when you do it this early on, it really helps to just kind of, like, set everything up right off the bat. Like, this is why I was also trying to, you know, get the kick mix sounding right as well, is because I really like when you just sort of have all the elements already working as they're going to, and then when you go to, like, arrange your track and kind of make it into a more full idea, you know, you have, like, a little bit more, of an idea of what it's really going to sound like, as opposed to, like, if I just did all of this stuff dry and didn't really put too much effort into it, it may sound completely different later on when I try to add a lot of stuff to it. So, I think I'm also going to add a little bit of reverb to these hi-hats. You can hear that helps to bring them to life a bit. And kind of give them some space. And yeah, so I'm going to do one more thing here. I have this open hi-hat. And we're going to take that, and we're actually going to put that at the end of this little 4-bar loop. So let's just make that. And then we'll just put that, like, literally on those last 2 little 16 notes there. So now we'll have this little open hi-hat that just kind of comes in at the end. And actually, now that I'm hearing it, I think I'm going to have this happen every 2 bars. So you can see, yeah, 2 bars there, and then it happens, and then every 2 bars. And then what I'm also going to do here is I'm going to get one more of these little drums that I have, which is this clap. And what we're going to do with this clap is we'll put that at the end of every 4 bars. So you can see I'm trying to, like, really set this up right here. We're really, like, focusing on the little details, but they're the little details that make, like, the big picture that much better. And again, I really like to get all this stuff out of the way, like the kick mixing, the hi-hat mixing, adding the little sort of, like, accent percussion, just because then when you're working on the track, you feel like you're working with something a lot more solid. And it takes it from just saying, okay, I'm working on an idea right now, to I'm finishing a song, if that makes any sense. And it's that kind of stuff that I feel like really makes a difference as well with the whole creative process. So from there, I'm going to put an echo on there. You may be kind of familiar with this. We'll do 16th notes, and yeah, we'll change that to 16th notes as opposed to dotted 16th notes. And now, yeah, there we go. Awesome. Well, this is sounding pretty good so far. The next thing I think that I'm going to do here is I'm going to get a pad. I'm going to make a pad, actually. So we're going to get analog here, and this is where we're going to start kind of, like, defining the key of the track and sort of, like, figuring out more direction for it. So I know I'm going to do a minor chord. Let me see. Sometimes with these reverb kicks, you can get a pitch out of them. A lot of times you don't really get one, because what's happening is basically you're getting this reverb from this, yeah, like that. which is kind of like a lot of dissonant frequencies happening at once, and then you're just distorting it and then like cutting off everything except for the low end. So a lot of times you don't get a pitch from it, like it literally is just a lot of dissonant frequencies happening at once creating the sound. But sometimes, okay, yeah, so it's not really showing up. But again, it's worth trying because sometimes you will get a pitch out of it. So we're kind of free here to do whatever, I guess, which is cool. Nice. So I'm going to extend this out to 8 bars. Let's duplicate that, loop it. There we go. And then, yeah, you can see also, like, I'm kind of working more towards a finished arrangement as I go on as well. Like, with this, for example, expanding, we started in 4 bars, then we moved to 8 bars, and then eventually we'll get to the point where we're going to actually do, like, a full structure. But anyway, let's get this analog here. I'll turn it down a little bit, and I like to put in the chord first, so I'm kind of working with the sound from there. So maybe let's do, like, E minor. That sounds like it'll be cool. I don't use like E a lot. So I'm going to put these in here, and then I'm going to expand this out a little bit and make it kind of bigger sounding. So I'm going to double up the root note and the fifth, those 2 notes that I just duplicated, an octave down, and then I'm going to take this third here, the note in the middle, and put that up an octave, and then that should sound like this. Nice. Alright, so let's play with this envelope a little bit. Alright, that's sounding pretty good. I also think that I want to do a bit of side chaining. You can see this workflow here is a bit disjointed. Like, I'm working quickly, but I'm really just trying to attack, like, every thought that comes into my mind. Like, what's happening basically while I'm working on this is, like, okay, for example, at first it was set like this. So I was like, okay, I need to turn up that envelope. And then once that was good, then I was like, okay, I need to put the compressor on and sidechain it. So it's like, you know, it's not any kind of like predetermined workflow or anything. It's really just like what is most comfortable for you, I guess. So yeah, let's take this compressor, we'll turn on the sidechain, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the audio input from the kick, but what we're going to do is we're going to do pre-effects. So if I do it post-effects, what will happen? As you can see, it's really just ducking this out of the way the whole time, because what's happening is we have this like super long, heavy kick. But if we do pre-effects, what will happen? As you can see, now we can actually hear the pad, but it's just getting sidechained to essentially this. Well, minus the drum rack at the end. But yeah, so you can see, like, it's kind of a nice way to sidechain things without having to mess with that whole, like, difficulty that you get from the reverb. So from there, we can start kind of making this a sound. I'm gonna maybe do a bit of detune here. We'll turn down the filter, give it a bit of resonance. And we can even pitch this up an octave as well. Or like a few octaves. Yeah, that's cool. And then let's also change one of these to a pulse wave. I'll use this one. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn on LFO 2. And we'll turn the rate up a little bit. I like it to be kind of fast. And we'll put a bit of movement on this. So if I turn this LFO on here, maybe turn this up a little bit. You can kind of hear that movement if I turn off the LFO. Yeah, it really helps to bring that to life. And this is like a nice way to kind of make things a little bit more interesting as well. So from here, maybe I'll try a bandpass filter. Nah, let's just do the low pass. But alright, that's pretty good. So I'm also going to give it a bit of vibrato. I like these like faster kind of vibratos for sounds like this. And then we'll put a bit of reverb on it as well. Nice, the sidechain's a little too hard. Excellent. Now, something I'm hearing with this pad is I feel like it's a bit flat, to be honest with you. So what I want to try and do is I want to try and add this one little voice in here. And this is a technique that works pretty well for me in practice usually. So when we have this third up here, this minor third, what we can do is actually we can put in this note like right underneath it. I'm not sure exactly what musical interval that would be. I think it would be a second, I guess, because it's 2 notes up from the root. But when we add that, you can hear we get kind of a cooler sound because we have those 2 like very dissonant notes up there. But they're not like out of key with each other, they're just dissonant because they're literally a semitone apart. Alright, so this is sounding pretty good, so I'll do a bit more stuff to this. I'm gonna add a chorus because I want to make it a bit more interesting. And you can hear that really helps with that. I believe what I'm also gonna do is maybe try a bit of erosion before the chorus. Yeah, that's cool. That gives it more like kind of crunch. And then I think I'm also going to grab an EQ8. Because you can see there's like that weird low end that's happening with this that we definitely want to get rid of. Alright, this sounding pretty good. Cool, so I think that the next thing I'm going to spring for here is an ARP of some sort. So what we're going to do is, let's make this with analog as well. I might change it to a different synth, but analog, I'm just very familiar with it. It's very comfortable for me when I'm trying to make new sounds. And that's another thing too, like with this whole like making a full track thing, like if you get to this stage and you find yourself kind of stuck, like you're kind of like, okay, got an 8-bar loop, it's sounding kind of cool, but it's not quite there. Yeah, definitely, like, just honestly, grabbing things that you're really familiar with is kind of a good technique, because what will happen is, like, you kind of just know how it works. Like, with analog, I'm very comfortable with it. You guys know I use it in a lot of my videos. So, if I'm just going to tell myself, okay, I want to finish this track, and I need an ARP to do that, then it's going to be a lot easier for me to, like, come up with things, like I said, in a more familiar kind of thing. So, what I'm going to do to make this ARP here is I'm going to put in a bunch of 16th notes on E. And basically, E is the root note. We're in E minor. But what this allows me to do is we're kind of just starting already with the rhythm that we're going to have. Well, for the most part, because some of the stuff might kind of mess that up, which I'll talk about. I'm also grabbing this compressor to sidechain into the kick. But yeah, so we're just kind of starting out with that. I think I'm going to pitch it down. Let's just do 1 octave there. And then I'm also going to take this amp envelope. Yeah, there we go. But you can see what happens is already we're getting that cool kind of 16 note feel out of it. And then what we can do from here is just kind of add more notes to the sequence using this pattern that we've already set out, which I'll show you in a moment. So what I'm also going to do here is I'm going to shorten these notes a little bit so they don't touch. So you get a more like choppy kind of feel as opposed to just kind of like one long note with those weird things. But yeah, so from here what we can start doing is we can just start playing around with these and seeing like what sounds good. Like maybe we'll do nice. Okay, so this is a pretty good start. And then I'm just going to actually take that and copy it over and just kind of add some variation. But you can see, like, this is a really good way to do this because, like, already we're just coming up with cool stuff. And I think this is a lot faster, too, than, like, kind of taking it and, like, just saying, like, just doing something like this. Like, basically just starting with a blank MIDI clip and then just going in and, like, doing it note by note. Because, again, that way you're kind of just, you're going note by note. But with this, you're kind of, like, starting with something and then just sort of work, like, chiseling away at that more so than you are, like, trying to actually, like, forge a new path. Cool, so we'll move around some of these notes a little bit more. sounding pretty good. So now we can take it and try to make a sound out of this. So I'm gonna get some unison, because already I want this to be like a really big, kind of like stabby arp, if that makes any sense. And I'm not really going for a 303 type of sound, even though I am using the filter envelope, or the filter with an envelope on it. That's kind of cool. It's very different. So I'm gonna start with this. I'm probably gonna come back. Maybe I'll give it a little bit of vibrato. Yeah, that's good. But we're gonna go now and do some effects. And I like the effects, or kind of like doing effects at this stage, because like you really don't know exactly what you want, and you will get some interesting stuff with the effects, and you'll kind of see too, like as you're going through and doing it, you'll want to go back and like do different things inside of the synth. So that's some echo. Alright, there we go. I had to put that up an octave. Let's give it a bit of reverb. Nice. Okay, so you can hear this is getting a bit more like kind of together, I guess. Also, a good test I like to do when I'm writing these kind of arps with like a techno track is just mute everything else and hear how it sounds when it's just the kick and this arp. And like if it still has that same kind of energy, then like you're on to something. Cool, so I'm gonna add a bit of pulse width modulation to this first oscillator. That's cool, it has like a really old school kind of like vibe to it. Nice. Cool, so from there, I think I'm gonna add a bit of saturation, and this also helps with like kind of coloring the sound too, because like obviously this kind of sounds very square wavy, you know, but if we add a bit of saturation to it, especially with the wave shaper, we can kind of make it a bit more unique. Like you can hear just from doing that already. Nice. Okay, so let's bring those other things back in here. Cool. So let's give this a little bit of EQ8 to just kind of cut out some low end. And that's pretty good for that art. So yeah, you can kind of see like, you know, the process here. Like I started with a pretty simple sound and just kind of got the notes that I wanted in there. And then from there you can really go and refine it and make it something a little bit more interesting. Like, it really helps to start with the notes because like a lot of times with synths, you'd be surprised like how, like when you hear songs and you hear like a really cool synth in a song that you're like, wow, I wish I could recreate that. Like you'd be surprised like how dependent it is on like the specific set of notes that were being played in that song with that sound. So that goes to say like yeah, it kind of helps to have what's going to be played on the sound before you go in and do it. Because, like, think about it. If I made this, like, a cool, like, bass stab or something. Like, let's say that was what I wanted. And I thought that sounded so dope as a bass stab. But then all of a sudden, when I was actually playing it with the notes here, that it's actually going to play in the track, it doesn't sound as cool. Yeah, it's no good. So it's kind of about slowly putting it together like that. So alright, from here I think I'm actually going to add in a little stab. I want to give it something that's a little bit more sparse. That's kind of like, I won't say like melodic, but like not a drum, if that makes any sense. So let's get operator here. I'm gonna say let's get FM here. Let's get operator here and do some FM. I'm gonna make a little like donk kind of stab sound. Let's turn down the decay on this thing. That's good. I like how that sounds. I want to make this a little bit more impactful. This does like work. Like if this was like just a kick and this thing, you would feel the power of that, but like this isn't gonna have that much impact in the track. Like even if I play it right now, you can hear like it kind of just comes in as like this little doom. So we need to give it something to make it a little bit more of like a hit. And that also comes with like the envelopes, like the volume envelopes. Like you can hear if I shorten that first one, already that makes a pretty nice difference on there. We can maybe turn up this pitch envelope and get a bit of like that. Yeah, there we go. See, the key with the pitch envelope is it's very, very effective. But you just gotta like really know how to dial it in. Alright, so I'm gonna make a little pattern for this. Let's see. Maybe I'll do like... yeah, let's do that. And then I'll make something to kind of go in the second part as well. But alright, cool. So again, just like I was saying before, I made a simple sound and then put in the note that I wanted. And then we're gonna go in and kind of work with it some more. Alright, so I'm gonna play around with adding some of these other oscillators as well. Because you can hear those kind of make it more interesting. Like just a donk on its own can be kind of boring. But you can hear we can make some kind of more interesting sounds this way. And so what I'm doing here is I started with a sine wave, and then I'm just going into this little like user mode, I guess it is, with the waveform here on operator. And you can hear like you can kind of draw in a little bit cooler stuff and get some more interesting kind of textures out of it. Such as that. Alright, that sounds pretty cool. Maybe let's try adding a low pass filter with an envelope onto that. Yeah, that's good. Maybe we can bring this down. Alright, cool. So, from there, we can add maybe a bit of echo. I'll do like a 16th note echo. We'll turn the dry wet down a bit. Okay, so actually, you know what I think I'm going to do here? I'm going to get a simple delay. And with the simple delay, we're going to do the 16th note echo. So basically just that mono, and then it's set to like 1, I guess, would be 16 notes. Like that. There we go. Gotta bring the dry wet down a little bit. And then on the echo, I'm actually going to go in here and we're going to change this to dotted 8th notes. And that will just be kind of... see, we can get like a cool rhythm between them. And it works really well. When you have a sound like this, it's really sparse and just kind of plays like once every 2 bars. You can get some kind of cool vibes that way. Now this sound is a little quiet. I'm gonna turn it up with the utility. And we also gotta get a sidechain on there. I always like to just take the sidechain compressor, or copy it, I guess, from the other things that are going on in my track, or the other elements of my track. Nice. Now, the last thing that I think needs to be done here, or at least needs to be done on this, is, like, I need to cut out some low end, because obviously this is very much in the low end, you can see, and if I play this with the kick, it's kind of messy there, so yeah. I wanted this to be, like, kind of playing low, but you just have to fit it around the kick. Now, what I want to do here is also have like another stab, and we'll have a bit of like a call and response type of thing. So basically, we'll have this one play here in this bar, and then the new one will play somewhere in that bar, and then this one will play, and then we'll have the new one, and it'll be, you know, kind of playing off each other. And this is nice because what we have here is we really have a lot of elements that are just like kind of constantly on. Like this ARP is constantly going, this is constantly going, of course the hi-hats and all this stuff are constantly going. So to have these kind of like more sparse instruments kind of just coming in and out here gives it like some nice context, you know. It's kind of like a, or I guess like a nice contrast is really more the word I'm looking for there. Nice. But yeah, it gives it some more contrast, and it makes it just a little bit more interesting than just doing the same thing the whole time. So, and then we'll have this one play there. And I'm gonna make this one with analog because I believe it's gonna be like a chord type of sound. And you know what? On this operator, I think I'm gonna get rid of the echo, but that's okay. You know, sometimes when you're going through and making a track, that's what happens. You get rid of certain things, and you just come back and kind of finesse it. So from there, let's get this analog, and what I'm gonna do is, like I said, I want this to be playing a chord. So I could program in some chords, but I'd actually like to do this in a little bit of a more interesting way. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get a MIDI effect here. We're gonna get this chord, and we're gonna just make a minor chord with it. So let's put it up +3. Put it up, put the second one up +7, and then put this one down -12, so it's like an octave. And now, there we go, it's playing like a nice kind of minor chord. Awesome, so then we can kind of play with this. I'm going to give it a filter with this envelope. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, there we go. And then from there, we can just keep playing around with it, you know? It's like I was saying, like, just kind of start with something simple and build it into something a little more interesting. That sounds very much like the Landlord stab. That's interesting. Alright, so let's give it a bit of vibrato. There we go. You can hear I'm using vibrato a lot throughout this track, but it's not super noticeable. It's almost like just a nice way to give your sounds, like, more like character. But it doesn't always have to just be so obvious, you know? You also give it a bit of unison, that helps. I like how that sounds. Another note with analog here, I had to change this to 32 voices because basically when you use unison, it's doing double as many voices as what it's playing at any given time. And I guess here, that would go from 4 voices to 8, so yeah, I guess not that many more, but still. If we wanted to change this to 4 voices of unison, which does sound nice, we would have to change the voices. This just basically says like how many notes you can play at once, if on the most basic level. So from there, I'm gonna add a bit of echo, pretty standard kind of fare. With this one, we can just do like those dotted eighth notes and let that just kind of play out like that. But that sounds pretty good. I'm also gonna give it a bit of reverb, and you can see we got the compressor side chaining into the kick. interesting. So from here, I think I'm going to copy this over. And so what we have right now is we have a very dense 8-bar loop. And it's not really mixed. I mean, it is obviously, kind of mixed as we've gone along. I can definitely turn the whole mix down a bit, though. That's one thing. Again, we want to be hitting it like -5 or -6. But it's a very dense loop, and yeah, it doesn't have any arrangements. So from here is where I would usually start trying to put together the arrangement. And the reason why I waited so long is honestly just because, like, I like to kind of have everything in one place. Like, the idea here is that now we have our palette. It's almost like, when you're painting, you have all your colors on a palette, and you just kind of work from there. That's what this is. Now we're going to build the painting. We put the colors together. So I'm going to start out here. Let's just take all of this and move it over here. And I'm going to start out with the kick. And we can maybe get like this first stab or something. No, we'll bring that in a little bit later. I'm going to get this hi-hat, the 16-note hi-hat. That's a good start. And then what we can also do is grab these little claps, because those will just sort of come in, the little echo claps that I made. Those will just kind of come in and out there. But now, I got that. We'll copy it over for like 8 more bars. And then let's grab this pad. And with the pad, what we're going to do is we'll make this play over the whole 8 bars. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have it kind of fading in. And it'll literally just fade in for like 16 bars like that. Did I say the full 8 bars? I meant to say the full 16. But yeah, we'll have it fade in for those full 16 bars there. It'll just kind of be, slow burner. You can hear it kind of coming in. And maybe in the second 8 bars here, we'll have like the hi-hat come in. Or the sort of upbeat hi-hat, so to speak. Alright, this sounds pretty solid. So from here, I'm actually going to probably start doing a little bit of mixing as well. I like to do the arrangement and the mixing at the same time, because what really happens is I make the loop, like I was saying before, like I put together all the colors on the palette, so to speak. And then when I get to the point of like hearing the stuff in the track, that's when I usually hear things and I'm like, okay, I need to work on that. So for example here, these hi-hats are not really hitting that hard. They sound a bit underwhelming to me. So what I'm going to do to fix that is I'm going to put a bit of saturation on them. And you can hear that helps to kind of beef them up and make them kind of like a bit sharper. There we go. And then I'll also cut out a little bit of low end on those, because I'm imagining. Yeah, see, there we go. But that makes a nice difference. And again, these are the things that you really don't like notice as much until you start going in and trying to arrange the track. Cool, so from there, we'll just keep going. I'll duplicate these things over. Let's do another 16 bars. And in this part, we will have the pad playing just at full blast. Now, what I'm going to do to duplicate this is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to turn on this sort of this automation lock. And so what this does is it basically says that when you duplicate something with automation on it, it will only duplicate the clip and not the automation. So, like if I don't have that on, you can see I duplicate it. And then we just have the pad fading in again because we've got that automation. But if I turn it on, there we go. Cool, and then in this part we'll have the stabs start coming in as well. But what I think I'm going to do with those is I'm going to have them actually kind of like filter up. So we'll put them in a group, and then I'm just going to literally have an auto filter, like, filtering up during that time. I really like to make these tracks kind of, like, more slow burn, like I was saying, like, just kind of, you know, start out with, like, the vibe of the whole track, but just, like, really kind of ease into it, because what happens when you have that kind of vibe where you have it starting out kind of slower, and then you have something more intense later, is you're really able to build into it, and when you build into it right, it works really well. Like, listen to this, and then listen to this. Quite a bit more energy going on there, and the goal is to perfectly blend from this part to this part in less than a minute, which can be done pretty easily if you do stuff like this, you know, just kind of have things coming in very smoothly. Yeah, there we go. And another thing is, you can see I don't have this doing like a full 16 bar automation here. It's kind of like, I guess that would be 14 bars. Yeah, 14 bars. That's another thing. If you think about it, like, if you were doing this live, like, say you were literally turning the filter live on a Sunday. I'm saying literally a lot during this video. But say you were recording in, like, live automation, so to speak. Like, just turning a knob with your hands and recording the audio of that. You would never have it be perfectly 16 bars. Like, you would do it kind of a little bit off. Like, in this case, for example, doing it over 14 bars. So, with certain things in the mix, not everything. Like, with the pad, I still made that very uniform. But with certain things, I like to introduce a little bit of kind of, like, I don't want to say randomness, but a little bit of kind of imperfection is the best way I could put it. By doing kind of like imperfect automation. Like, it's not perfectly 16 bars, it's 14. So that's why that is set like that. So from here, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this stuff over, and we're going to make a little break here. And what we're going to do for the break is I'm going to have this kick. I'm going to put an EQ8 on it, which is just going to be like a high pass. Like that. And then we'll have that automate up. We'll have it definitely be turned on during the break here. But then we'll also maybe have it come on like a bar before or something. I like to usually do something like this. And there will be the break. And so from here, we can copy over this pad. We'll have that playing during the break. We can also have these elements. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have the ARP start coming in. So I'll have that there. And we'll just turn the filter down like I did. And then I'll just kind of have that automating up. And what I like to do with these things is I'll usually like just listen to it. Like literally just hit play. And then go in and draw the automation in sort of like live, quote unquote, while the track is playing. So we can get a more like realistic feel, because truth be told, I could just do like this, like just have it automate up like that, but that's a little bit boring. I like it when we kind of go through and get more like subtle nuances. Alright, there we go. So you can hear, yeah, I've obviously everything else isn't really doing too much building right now, but this thing is definitely pretty nice. And you can see by drawing in these little points, and again, just sort of taking the time to do it in a more nuanced and subtle way, it feels a little bit more like live and a little bit more human and just a little bit better than like just going through and, like I said, making a straight line like I did with the volume automation on the pad. So from there, speaking of the pad, I'm also going to do a bit of automation on that, because what I want to have happen here is basically this build is going to happen, or this break build, whatever you want to call it. But the pad is going to kind of go out, and then by the time it gets to like here, like a bar or two before the drop, it'll just be like really building the tension for this to happen. And maybe I'll have this cut out during the drop too. But yeah, so we can just kind of do a similar thing with the pad. I'm gonna use the filter automate, or the filter frequency. Do this. I'll make it kind of slow. And again, I'm just trying to make this as like subtle and sort of like you don't notice it as possible. It's like I said, like the goal, like I was talking about earlier, to get from this to this as seamlessly as possible is also kind of the goal here. Like you're trying to make this just a very smooth transition and just make the energy build and kind of fall the perfect way. So you can hear now, like, the pad's kind of going out, but the ARP is coming in to take its place. Okay, cool. So from here, we can do a bit of stuff with the drums as well. I'm going to group them all together. And what I'm going to do here is I kind of have a few ideas for like how to transition this here, because I want the drums to kind of like filter out the way the pad is, so that then when it gets to here and it's just basically the kick and the ARP and the little stabs, it's like, yeah, it feels a little bit smoother. Because what happens is if you go from here, just full force hi-hats, full force drums into this, like this very minimal kind of simple thing, it's not really going to work that well because all the energy is in the hi-hats. Like the hi-hats won't really have that kind of like hype. That's why when we're building the track, we go from this to this and bring those upbeat hi-hats in, and they make it feel more intense. Yeah, that's basically like illustrating what I'm saying. It's like the hi-hats are what give it all the energy. So we don't want to go from full energy essentially, this part with all the hi-hats, to this. So I need to kind of like more smoothly arrange this. So the way I'm thinking to do it here is by having a low pass filter kind of filtering out here. Like what we'll do is we'll just do like this. Oh, and then we have to automate that back up. Whoops. There we go. And then what I'm going to do underneath that to kind of make it a little bit smoother is I have the snare here. This one, like a pretty straightforward, kind of like punchy drum machine style snare. I'm going to add a bit of a pitch envelope to that. There we go. And then we're going to have that building up during that part. So it'll be like basically these main drums kind of filtering out, but then this thing will be coming in. And this is what will be kind of like building the tension into the next part. So there we go. And we're going to have this sort of fade up with a utility, like the volume, like that. And there we go, you can hear that builds a lot nicer. Now obviously, it's a bit rough around the edges here, but it works really well because you have this thing playing just completely straight 16th notes. And then we just basically have like pure energy coming in from the snare because it's so much in the high end. But then it also has that kind of like punchy low mid-range. It works really well. And so I'm going to do some more to this. I'm going to put a drum bus on it actually because it feels very like dry. And we'll shorten it a little as well. Nice. And so then I'm also going to add a bit of like automated effects. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to have this EQ8, and that is going to filter up. And what that's going to do is just kind of make this sort of like fizzle out here, because you can also hear, similar to what I was saying with like if you just have the full drums going straight into the drop, like when we go from this directly into that drop, it feels a little weird. So we're going to add some automation to just make it kind of come to life a little bit. So I'm going to have this high pass automating up in the second half there. Maybe it'll start there. Again, kind of like making it more imperfect and a little bit more like human by having it not just be straight on the grid like that. But yeah, you can hear that works pretty well. We can maybe have it go a bit higher, actually. I underestimated. Yeah, there we go. And then I'm also going to add a bit of reverb automation. So we'll put that there before the EQ, and we'll just have the dry wet on that kind of going up during this part as well. And yeah, that makes it a bit smoother. Ooh, I need to maybe make that a little bit higher, because something that can happen there is you just have it automating like that, where it just kind of pauses around like 185 hertz. And you can hear that's just like low end. So you gotta just kind of get the sweep right. Like you can see, this kind of stuff seems simple, but this is the stuff I find myself spending like the most time on. Like honestly, making this ARP, making the drums, making all the different sounds in here was really not nearly as like labor intensive as just trying to perfect like these builds and stuff. Like these are really the important things, I feel like. But yeah, that's pretty good. I'm gonna get rid of that little open hi-hat there. You can also hear the cool thing that happens is it's kind of like morphing the snare from like a snare into like a white noise kind of thing, because you can hear once it starts filtering out that punch from like the low mids, it almost just becomes like a reverb, and then when we have the reverb on there, or it becomes like a white noise, and then when we have the reverb on there. Alright, and so in this part now, what I'm gonna do is I just made that little automation on the filter of the ARP. So you can hear it's kind of chilling out a little bit, and then we'll have all of these hi-hats come in. And what these will do is they'll just come in there, and it'll kind of feel like it's, you know, it's getting more energy, because we're going from... There we go. Now another thing I think I want to do here, and this is kind of a good tip, is I'm going to add a ride cymbal. So we're going to duplicate this over one more time for this next part, and I'll also copy over the pad real quick. Okay, cool. So from here, what we can kind of do is I want to add this ride on here, and what the ride cymbal does, there's a sample. You've definitely heard it if you've heard a lot of techno tracks. But you can hear it's got this really nice, like, kind of sparkly high end. And so this kind of helps, you know, separate this part from here, this part from over here. Because, like I was saying earlier, when you have, like, these kind of tracks, and, I mean, dance music in general, like, the groove is in the low end, that's what's making you dance, but the energy is in the high end. So, when we have this new sort of, like, high end thing come in here, that wasn't in this part, and especially when it's, like, so sharp and bright as this is, you get kind of like, yeah, it just kind of makes this part feel more intense than the other part, and thus kind of helping to build the energy more. It's not just, you know, we're not just dropping it all at the start. You kind of like have new stuff coming in throughout the track. Cool, and then we're also going to have the pad in here, so maybe I'll have that filter frequency there, and let's see where. There we go. And actually, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the pad come in here. So I'm just going to consolidate that, Control J or Command J if you're on a Mac, and then we'll drag these over, the notes of this synth. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to have this one kind of like slowly building in, because I don't want it to just all come in at once. It's like I was saying before, you know, you don't want to just have it all peak at one point. You want to have it kind of like moving. We can maybe give the ARP a little bit of automation as well. Nice, that sounds pretty good. So I think I'm going to go in here and do a bit more kind of like mixing stuff. Like for one, I want to put on the full drum group, I want to put a drum bus, because like these drums are sounding pretty good on their own, but I feel like they could use a bit more like power, and drum bus is really good for that. Like here's without it, and then with it, so you can hear big difference there. Now this track is hitting like a lot harder. And I'm also going to go on this ride. I did this a bit like sort of faster and sort of dirtier earlier. I have this little high pass on here, but I'm going to take this and we're going to turn that off, and I'm going to do it with an EQ now. So with these kind of ride cymbals, you can see there's usually a lot of low end and a lot of like mid range that you don't want, especially if you've got like a drum bus on there and it's adding more distortion. So I'm just going to cut out the low end. And then there's also a bit of these like whistly frequencies with this one. And what I mean by this is this. If I take this and turn on the headphone icon, turn up that key a little bit, you can hear there's like that. And what's happening is that is basically just playing in the background of your track. It would be the same thing as if you literally just took a sine wave and put it at that frequency. What is that? That's A#6. It would be the same as if you just put a sine wave playing A#6 in the background of your track. Obviously, you probably don't want that. So yeah, we're going to just turn that off. And already you can hear a huge difference there. It's one of those things that you really don't notice until you do it. But we can do this. There are usually a few more in here. Like we can kind of go through and find. This technique is called combing, if you want to look it up. So what you're looking for is something like that. Like, you hear when I go through these other ones, it's not quite as loud. And then all of a sudden when I get there, it's like way louder. There you go. And okay, that's pretty good. Maybe we could check for like one more. Oh, wrong band there. Ah, yeah, see, there's another one. We'll just turn that down. And okay, so here it was without the EQ8. Kind of messy and loud. And then here it is with it. So a bit less, like, sharp and bright. You can hear it fits into the mix a lot better. And I also want to go on this clap and add a bit of saturation as well. It's kind of subtle. I mean, it's just this little clap here, but you can hear it just feels very dry. So we can maybe give it a bit of drive. And then like some wave shaper. And there we go. And then I'll also put an EQ8 at the end there. So, you know, we're just going through here and tying up any loose ends. And alright, that sounds a lot better. So here's without any of what I just did. And then here's with it. So yeah, it sounds a lot better. I'm going to turn that down a little bit. And so this pad sounds pretty cool. Oh, there we go. So turn the resonance up a little bit on that. You can see, like, I really like to go through to each of the individual elements and just see, like, how can I make this better, you know? Like, how can I make this, like, that much stronger? How can I make it carry the track that much more? Like, overall, like, just trying to make the track better step by step. And you can skip back, too. Like, you'll see, like, having a video like this is actually kind of useful. I'm probably going to do this, to be honest with you. But you can see, like, how it sounded, like, even 5 minutes ago before I had started playing around with that ride cymbal, or however long ago that was. And, like, how it's going to sound when I get through, just going through and, like, really, you know, taking my time with each step and really making sure everything is perfect. Like, there's no sense in rushing it. You know, I'd rather take my time and make one really good track than take the same amount of time and make like 5 very bad or just not as good tracks. So this ARP, one thing about this ARP that's been kind of bugging me is it still feels like very dry. Like it still feels very much like a saw, square wave kind of sound. So to fix this, I'm going to put a phaser on it. And what we're going to do with the phaser is we're going to not use any modulation. I'm just going to use it for kind of a cool texture like this. Because you can hear when we bring that in, it gives it a little bit of a more interesting sound. And then listening to the stabs down here, I like this one, the FM one, but I'm not crazy about this. I think I'm going to do something kind of similar with this one. We're going to get a flanger. And what I'm going to do with the flanger, basically the same thing. I'm just going to turn off the LFO, not have any modulation. We'll turn the dry wet down a little bit. And just kind of do something like that. Yeah, that's cool. So it goes from that to that. A little bit more interesting. Now I'm also going to put on the group of those a bit of an EQ8, just to kind of cut out the low end. Maybe turn out, or cut out some of that stuff as well. And then I think I'm also going to put a little bit of saturation before the EQ8. Just to give those sounds a bit more like texture. Yeah, there we go. Nice, so like I said, this is sounding a lot stronger than it was before. And I think at this point, we've got a pretty full arrangement here. We've got like almost 2.5 minutes of this track. From here, it would really just be like where you would go next from here would be, as far as arrangement goes, would be to really just kind of like, you know, put in some more breaks. Like, we can honestly copy this over. And just sort of structure it more, kind of like, you know, doing what you did, like playing around with these elements, bringing more elements in, kind of like, just, yeah, giving an arrangement, bringing these sounds to life, putting the paint on the canvas, so to speak. But I think at this point, what we're actually going to do is we are going to do some mastering. So this is kind of like the last thing you would do, of course. But yeah, what we're going to do is we're just going to get this track sounding really loud and powerful, but not like clipping and not too messy. So the first thing I'm going to do for mastering is I need to check where the track is hitting just overall on the VU meter. So if we go back to session view here like I just did, you can hit tab or just click this little thing up here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit play at like the loudest part, which is objectively here, because this is when everything is playing. And we'll just turn these down a little bit because you can see tending at about -1. And I usually like to have between like -3 and -6 for mastering. Like about there is pretty good. And I'm just listening through my mix and hearing if there's anything that I want to turn up or turn down. And this is kind of like the first step, you know, you want to like mastering isn't going to fix a bad mix, you know, you need to get your mix exactly how you want it. You really want your track to be sounding how you want it mix-wise before you even put any kind of mastering stuff on. But alright, so maybe turn everything down a little bit. Yeah, that's about good. So it's about -5.3. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to start putting stuff on the master so we can master this track. So the first thing that I'm going to do on here is I'm actually going to get an EQ8. And with the EQ8, we're just going to turn up the low end a bit. About like that. Nothing higher than like -4 or -5 or 4 or 5 or 6 dB. And then I'm also going to boost the highs a little bit in the same way. And then I'm going to do one more thing, which is I'm going to make a little cut between like 200 and 300 hertz. So we'll do maybe like 250. Yeah, 255. That works. And we're going to tighten the Q of that. And what that's going to do is that's just going to help to kind of cut out like any boxiness or sort of like messiness in our track. And what I mean by boxiness is specifically like these kind of frequencies. You can hear like, that's really where the like boxy part of the sound is. So if we cut that out, it just helps to make the overall track less messy like that. So here's without the EQ8. And then with it. So you can hear big difference there. It really helps, and I feel like it sounds, it sounds quite nice with this. It's something a lot of people do with mastering that isn't talked about a lot, but definitely like a good first step. You'll be surprised at the difference that makes on your mix. So the next thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a little bit of saturation. I don't want to go too crazy, but I like using saturation on the master because what it does is it essentially gives it like a bit of like umbrella processing. Umbrella processing is this term that I'm using to describe basically when you put like an umbrella of an effect over top of everything. Like sort of you're putting this one effect on everything and sort of like coating it in that effect. And because everything has at least a little bit of that effect on it, you get kind of like a more cohesive sound, and everything kind of, it helps to make everything sound like it's in the same world. And I'll show you too when I A/B this kind of like the difference. So the key here is just not going too crazy. I'm gonna put this on here just so I can kind of see, and we're gonna start turning the drive up a bit, maybe like that much, and then we'll turn the bass frequency up a little bit as well. I like using the analog clip for this, so turn that output down a little bit so we're still hitting not too high. And nice, so this sounds really good, and you can hear like it's helping to really glue it all together. So here's without the saturator, and then with it. So yeah, it really helps to kind of coat everything in that same sort of like sonic texture and make it all sound a little bit more like it's in the same world and like it's in the same track. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get a very small amount of compression. So I'm going to grab this compressor here and we're going to turn the threshold down a little bit. And what I'm looking for is this green line. Basically, this green line is like the input. And you can see we don't really need to do too much compression with this one, but what we're going to do is we're just going to compress this very like high peaks. And so to do this, we just lower the threshold until it's like right there at the top. And then we can bring it down a little bit more. And so what this does is it just kind of helps to sort of flatten it out a little bit and just kind of put everything around the same range. This is another good thing for really gluing everything together and making everything really like fit into the same mix. You can even do a bit more. You don't want to go too crazy. Like that's kind of too much. You can hear that's obviously just way too much. But you know, just doing it right on the peaks there, it's kind of nice. And we can play with the ratio a little bit too. Like, if you feel like the compression is too much, you can turn it down or turn it up. I'll put it about there. And I also like to turn up the attack a bit too, because what the attack does is it basically says how long it takes for the compression to kick in. So if you have a higher attack, what you will do is effectively, it won't mess up the transients of your sound. The transients, if you don't know, basically the little like hit right at the start of the sound. Like this thing. That is the transient of this kick. That little area that I'm sort of circling there. And yeah, you don't want to mess that up. That's what makes like the impact of your sound. That's what really makes like the hit. And compression can kind of flatten those out. So with this attack, you're able to kind of make it so you still get those transients, but then it's still compressing the sound. So here it is. Here is without compression, and then with it. Without, and then with it. So, you know, again, the key is just not going too crazy here. Already we run the risk of going too crazy because we already have like almost everything sidechained to the kick. So to have some compression on the master, it helps a lot, and you can hear like, yeah, it's really helping with the mastering of this track and making it sound that much more professional and powerful, but you just don't want to go too crazy with it. So from here, what I like to do, kind of look at the master and see where it's hitting. And you can see this is hitting at about like -2. So what I'll do here is I'll grab a limiter and just boost it 2 dB. And now you can see it's hitting at basically 0. It's at -0.30, but you know, basically 0. And so what we've done here is we've now just used this limiter to just bring the volume up. And the reason why I'm doing it with a limiter as opposed to like a utility or something like that, because I could just grab a utility and boost the volume 2 dB with that, is you can see we start bringing that up, you run the risk of clipping. And so obviously putting a limiter on your master is probably one of those things that you don't really want to do like right at the start of your track, but when you're mastering, it's the perfect way to bring the volume up and still make sure it's not going to clip. Like what we're doing here is we're basically saying we're just boosting it up 2 dB so it hits 0, and then this is just in case there's anything that gets it a little bit louder than 2 dB. It'll just make sure that it's not clipping. So again, we're not just taking the whole track and limiting it. We're just limiting those few sounds in there that might be a little bit louder and might take it a little bit higher than 0 dB. Yeah, and we're just kind of boosting that gain. And again, like, if you have this utility and do that, then what will happen is you can get it up that extra 2 dB, but like, let's say we have a part where it's like a bit louder, like maybe the snare, when that's playing. So it didn't do it, but you know, there'll be some parts of the track that are slightly louder, and again, they will start clipping, and you will have a track that is clipping, so you don't want to do that. So yeah, the limiter is just a good way to give that little bit of volume boost at the end, but still keep it under control. So here, I'll show you kind of what the mastering stuff has done. So here is without any of it. And then with it. So you can hear, definitely pretty important for kind of like making your track sound professional and really gluing everything together and making it all work. So we've gone now all the way through a track. I've started from nothing and built this out of it. So yeah, so that's pretty much going to be it. I hope you guys enjoyed. This is a series I'm going to continue doing. I did one last Tuesday, and this is Tuesday that I'm dropping this one. I'm going to do another one next Tuesday, and for every Tuesday for the foreseeable future. I cannot talk today. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed, and that is going to be it for today, guys. So make sure to let me know what you think of this video in the comments, and make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. Once again, you can get the project file and the samples and everything from this track in the description, so make sure to check that out. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it will be available shortly. Thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you again tomorrow with another video.